Welcome to the Cosmic Busker. My name is Bobby Cody. Excuse me. This video is going to be a continuation of the ancient Mars civilization, the timeline of discovery series. This is going to be part 2. I'd like to start off by saying a thank you to Richard Hoagland. Richard Hoagland is an investigator who has been working on ancient Mars civilizations for decades, along with former NASA scientists who left NASA and agreed to work with him based on their knowledge of what's happening inside of NASA. We're going to cover some of that information in this video. If you'd like to take a look at Richard Hoagland, I'm going to be using his graphics from his website, enterprisemission.com. That's his old website. It's still available. He has a new website. It's called www.theothersideofmidnight.com. He has a radio program where he investigates various more esoteric or space-related subject matters. That airs Saturdays and Sundays. It will be from midnight to 3 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, from 9 p.m. to midnight Pacific Standard Time. Thus the other side of midnight. So once again, if you want to check that out, it's www.theothersideofmidnight.com, and his old website is www.enterprisemission.com. I'll provide links to both down below. Our last video left off with the work of Vince DiPietro and Gregory Molenaar. These are two of the imaging specialists from NASA who have been working in conjunction with Richard Hoagland to investigate this one particular area of Mars called the Cydonia region of Mars. It's in this region of Mars that the infamous face on Mars was found. These imaging specialists also investigated other anomalous structures in the area. And they found what has come to be known as the D&M Pyramid. D&M Pyramid named after them, D for DiPietro, M for Molenaar, thus the D&M Pyramid, or DiPietro and Molenaar Pyramid. I found this to be a 5-sided pyramid that had been destroyed, apparently in a devastating war that took place on Mars that destroyed the civilization on Mars. I've done a video on that. I'm going to provide a link to that right now up there somewhere in the corner. They also did a paper with John Brandenburg, who is in that link I just provided. That paper is called the Cydonia Hypothesis. I'm going to take a look at that in a moment, but first I want to take a look at one of the graphics from the Enterprise mission on the D&M Pyramid, and take a look at the work of DiPietro and Molenaar in conjunction with Richard Hoagland, and what they found regarding this destroyed pyramid. So first we're going to cut to what the pyramid looks like right now, and then we'll cut over to their essential analysis of the destroyed pyramid, and then the third image we're going to take a look at will actually be a graphic of what the pyramid essentially was shaped like prior to its destruction in this war that occurred on Mars. So let's cut to that right now.
Here we have in front of us one of the original NASA images of what has come to be known as the D&M Pyramid. The rest of it does appear rather irregular. So, is it artificial or is it natural? This comes a question. DiPietro and Molenaar found that there was nothing like it in the surrounding area. The mountains usually come in chains of mountains. And this is all alone in the area. There's nothing like it in the area, so it's certainly not part of a mountain chain. It's certainly high enough to be a mountain, however. It's about 1 kilometer high, at its peak, which is about 2/3 of a mile. And each of the facets of it, or the sides, are about 3 kilometers or 2 miles long. So it's very large. Now, these imaging specialists, DiPietro and Molenaar, determined it had to be a structure. So let's take a look at their analysis of the structure first. As you can see from this marked graphic of the D&M Pyramid, they found much evidence of a destroyed structure. They found internal explosion deformations, an explosion exit wound, and collapsed debris flow. It appears that this structure or pyramid was destroyed in whatever war also destroyed the civilization on Mars and Mars itself. Ultimately, what DiPietro and Molenaar did was they extended out the lines on the structure to try to determine what its shape was. By simply extending out the lines, they came up with this shape here. What we see is a 5-sided pyramid. One thing I'd like to particularly point out is along the left-hand side of it, you see how it's white and shiny like that? That white and shiny reflectivity is a good indicator that this is not a natural structure, but that it is artificial. Natural structures don't have that type of reflectivity. Artificial structures do have that type of reflectivity. What we have is essentially the sun shining on the left-hand side of this. Thus we get that reflectivity because that is metal, almost certainly, some type of steel or metal.
Now, the D&M Pyramid isn't the only structure in this Cydonia region of Mars. We've already discussed in part 1 the face on Mars as well, which I'll put a link to up there, not a link but a graphic up there that you can see. Now, if you look closely at that last graphic that I had from the Enterprise mission graphic of the D&M Pyramid, they did some angular measurements as well. That becomes very important once we begin to take a look not only at the face and its relationship to the D&M Pyramid, but also all the rest of the structures in the Cydonia region of Mars. D&M Pyramid and the face aren't the only structures. There's a whole host of structures in this entire area. And once you begin to measure the relationship of all these different structures, as Richard Hoagland has done in the past with his team of researchers, you'll find that there's a message in the structures based on these angular measurements. What I'd like to do right now is go to a graphic of different elements of the Cydonia region. We're going to take a look at, first we're going to take a look at different areas of the Cydonia region, how Hoagland and his team of researchers have essentially marked them to describe them as in general characteristics of what they are in a relationship in a way that we'll be able to understand. And then we're going to take a look at the angular measurements between all of these structures and what that means for us, because there is a message in these angular measurements. So there's a code essentially, and this is something that we see again and again in ancient megalithic structures on Earth as well. We see that there's a purpose to the way that these structures like the Great Pyramid, pyramids in Mexico, Teotihuacan, any type of ancient mysterious structure on Earth, they all have these very specific measurements and angles that appear to be sending a message to us. So let's go. I'm going to cut right now to the Cydonia region, and we're going to look at different structures on in the Cydonia region. and then we're going to put them all together and take a look at the angles and the message that sends us, because it sends us an important message about the reality in which we live upon. It's a reality that is redundant throughout the solar system. It's easily proven. We can see it on each planet in our solar system, and it's really fascinating, and it's really important if we're going to go any further in species without destroying ourselves. So let's go to that Cydonia region right now. We'll take a look at each section of the Cydonia region.
The first structure we have is the face on Mars in the Cydonia region. This isn't the best picture. We'll have better pictures later in the video. Next we have the D&M Pyramid. Note that all these lines are measuring the different angles among all these structures. Next we have what they have termed the city. You can see all these pyramidal structures in the city. In addition, if you look closely, right in the middle of all these structures, you'll see 4 little dots in what they believe is some type of square in the city. Just want to leave it there for a few seconds so you can get a good look at it. Pause the video if you want to take a close look. Next, we can see these lines pointing to what they refer to as tetrahedral mounds on the surface of Mars. Then we see another tetrahedral ruin right here marked with a triangle. It's very close to the D&M Pyramid that we had looked at before. Next we have the Tholus, which at its peak has what they termed an apex tetrahedron. And finally we have what they term the cliff, with a crater off to the right with a tetrahedron on its edge. Taken all together, this is here are the individual elements that we're looking at all pieced together on one Cydonia map. You can see the face aligned a little bit off of center, left of center. To the left of that we have what has been termed the city. What Hoagland and his team noted is from the middle of that city, it looks out perfectly at a profile of the face. So this face was built specifically at this location to be viewed from the city. They also found out something very interesting. Based on the original alignment of Mars and the way its initial angle, they believe this had been actually the equator of Mars. And the equator actually went right through the city and along the face. And thus, from the middle of the city, one could see the sun rising out of the mouth of the face in the morning. This would no doubt induce a certain religious awe in the inhabitants of the city as they saw the sun rising out of the face every morning. At the bottom of this graphic, near the bottom left corner, we can see the D&M Pyramid. That's where that's located here. Near the bottom right corner of this graphic, we have what's called the Tholus and its apex tetrahedron as well. And then in the upper right corner, near the upper right corner, we have the cliff, along with it the crater and its associated crater tetrahedron. Now note how the city, the face, and the cliff all sort of align on a straight angle to each other. This acted as a straight viewing line, so the inhabitants of the city would look out at the face, see the sun rising from the face, but it's believed that cliff may have been acted as some type of barrier so that the viewing point from the city would be much clearer. Thus, the inhabitants of the city wouldn't see the sun prior to its rising out of the face, because the cliff would act as a sort of barrier to them seeing that sun. It would make the viewing perfect. Now, a sharp-eyed viewer would note a repeated angle measurement in among these structures. that one repeated angle among these structures is 19.5 degrees. That's going to be very important. I'll leave this up for a few more moments so you can take a look, or you can pause it to take a look at the repeated 19.5 and 90 degree angles.
So this repetitive angle of 19.5 degrees between all these structures appears to be sending some type of message. And why 19.5? Ultimately, Richard Hoagland and his team of investigators found that, and this is based on the work of others who had investigated higher dimensions, basically structures in higher dimensions. Basically, if you hypothesize that we exist in not a 3 or 4 dimensional universe, but in a world in which there are higher dimensions, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 dimensions, the question becomes, what happens to structures? How does these higher dimensions affect structures and the way they move and in our universe? And what they found, that a sphere that exists in higher dimensions, as it's rotating, would have what Richard Hoagland termed in one of his videos a vorticular roiling motion, like this. So a higher dimensional sphere, which is what a planet is, it's a sphere, and if we hypothesize that when we have a multi-dimensional universe, then this sphere or this planet, when it rotates, it has a vorticular roiling motion in the higher dimensions, the unseen dimensions. So as it's rotating, it's going like this. This vorticular roiling motion sets in motion energy patterns throughout the sphere. Those energy patterns, because of the mathematics of the way these higher dimensions work, and this goes into higher mathematics, you can look this up if you'd like to. You'd have to look up higher dimensions, vorticular roiling motion spheres. What happens is that this motion, like this, of the rotating sphere, creates energy pathways. And in particular, the major energy pathway exit the sphere at one specific point on the sphere, and that point is 19.5 degrees. So it says, okay, that's theoretically great. It's pretty fascinating. We have this region of Cydonia, Mars. It appears to be sending out this message for whatever reason, 19.5 degrees, 19.5 degrees. For some reason they use this angle over and over again. Why is that important? Well, it matches with this rotating sphere in higher dimensions. So, does this have any application in the real world? You bet it does. As Hoagland and his team of investigators have pointed out, every single planet in our solar system has its largest energy outwelling at 19.5 degrees. I'm going to take a look at all the, right now we're going to go to each planet in our solar system and we're going to take a look at the largest outwelling on each planet and where it's located, and we're going to confirm that it's at 19.5 degrees. And we're going to start with the planet Earth, because the largest outwelling on our planet is also at 19.5 degrees, and it's one of the most beautiful and elegant places on the Earth, and it's located far from everything else in the middle of the ocean. Let's take a look at that right now. I'm certain you're all familiar with it.
The largest mountain in terms of sheer mass on planet Earth is Hawaii. Located deep in the Pacific Ocean, Hawaii is located directly at 19.5 degrees latitude. And Hawaii is actually a chain of islands, as you can see here on this map. These a chain of islands are created because there is essentially an energy push right here at 19.5 degrees. And as the crust of our Earth moves, that 19.5 degrees latitude, that stays the same. But the crust of the Earth moves, and thus it creates these spots of islands. With the current one being the biggest in the bottom right, because we have had the most stable environment in a long time. We're very lucky to have that. The largest volcano in the solar system is called Olympus Mons, and it's on the planet Mars. I included here on a latitude map so that you can see that, once again, the largest volcano in the solar system and on Mars is at 19.5 degrees. Those of you familiar with the solar system and our planets may be familiar with Jupiter and its Great Red Spot. Jupiter's Great Red Spot is a roiling storm that has been in existence on Jupiter for hundreds and hundreds of years. For as long as astronomers have been looking at Jupiter, they've been able to make note of that Great Red Spot. It's always existed. And of course, this massive, energetic Great Red Spot is located at 19.5 degrees latitude. The planet Neptune also has a storm similar to Jupiter's Great Red Spot. You can see it here along the left-hand side of this photo of Neptune. It's known as the Great Dark Spot of Neptune. And if you can't see the pattern, well, I'll tell you, it's located at 19.5 degrees latitude on Neptune.
Now, this is important for an abundance of reasons, obviously. First of all, just for an understanding of our universe in our surroundings in the world in which we exist. But this is also an energy source. This is an energy source that is pulsing throughout all planets. That means as an energy source, it's a potential energy source to be tapped as well. And not just necessarily tapping it from a planet, but any type of rotating sphere or even a rotating disk would more than likely, at least by theoretically, give off this energy at 19.5 degrees latitude. And if we find a way to tap into that, we may have an inexhaustible energy source, one in which we would be able to do away with energy sources like coal and petroleum that pollute the environment and have been monopolized by powers that don't necessarily have the best interests of humanity in mind. I'll leave this video off on that note. This is Ancient Civilizations of Mars, Timeline of Discovery. This is part 2. I'm going to try to finish part 3 today. We'll see if I'll get that done. If not, I hope to be able to do part 3 in the near future. Thanks for listening.